Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Brady. I am here with Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire. Governor, nice to see you.
Great to see you.
I was saying I just saw Steve Forbes, our editor-in-chief, of course, former presidential candidate in the hall. First thing he said when I said I was interviewing you is, ask him if he's going to run. So let me get that question out of the way for Steve Forbes. Are you going to run?
Well, you should ask Steve Forbes if what he thinks. Should I run? He's been in this realm before. He's had to answer these questions. So I may. I may. But right now, the focus for me, always first priority has to be New Hampshire. Unlike most of these candidates, I have a full-time job, right? 24/7, governor of New Hampshire. The phone is always on. But we are traveling a lot nationally, to be sure. And my biggest concern right now isn't about not necessarily my political future. It's about the political future of the party, right?
Yeah.
Are we reaching into the next generation of voter? Are we talking to independent voters? Are we being inspirational? Are we bringing them onto the team? Are we making a case with messaging that makes people want to jump on board so that we can be sure we're going to win in November of 24? Because you can't govern if you don't win. It doesn't matter who gets through the primary. If they can't close the deal in November, it ain't going to work. And right now, I don't think the Republican Party, based on what we just saw in November of 22, is in a place to make the best case for what we bring to the table. And I think we bring a lot. I think we got an incredible product, especially against a lot of this anti-business left-wing stuff you see out of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've got a great product and a great case to make. But right now, there's a lot of folks kind of sitting on the sidelines. And I think they should be great Republicans, great conservatives. But folks like myself and others are just trying to make sure that we're making that case as a party so that we can all come together and really solidify behind the candidate in November.
I know that you pinpoint November 2022 for obvious reasons. That is a message that did resonate, though, the last time around prior to that. What do you think has changed in that you feel it's not working as well anymore in terms of the direction that the party's going in, Governor?
Yeah, I don't think the direction of the party needs to change. I think there is a great galvanizing message that we're missing a little bit. And that's about what's at our core, right? It is about limited government. It's about local control, pro-business, individual liberties and responsibilities, low taxes, right? Those are the fundamentals that almost all Republicans can rally around and galvanize around, and that really build the basis of the Republican Party. And if we stick to that, we focus on those messaging principles and those principles of good governance, I believe, then I think that a lot of folks would love to see us and kind of be on board with us. But right now, we're not there. We tend to bring in candidates that tend to be more extreme, that allow the Democrats to define them as being more extreme. And that just doesn't pass muster. And the vast majority of those candidates lost in November of 22. They would, I believe, lose again in November of 24. So hopefully we're learning our lesson a little bit and not changing who we're about or where the party needs to go, but just getting kind of back to those basics that I think we can all be very successful on.
Now, I've seen in the news, you've commented certainly on former President Donald Trump and also on Ron DeSantis. Let's talk a little about the candidates that have put their hat in the ring. And I think what you've done in New Hampshire is very emblematic of the value proposition that you've talked about at the national level. What do you think has been missing from the rhetoric? You saw the CPAC gathering over the weekend. What didn't you hear that you wanted to hear there?
Boy, I wasn't at CPAC, so I didn't hear everything that was said, but I can tell you lately that the main focus is on kind of the woke anti-cancel culture stuff, which again, I hate wokeism. I think this cancel culture mentality that a lot of folks in America have is absolutely wrong. That seems to be the issue of the day, and I can appreciate that. But last time I checked, we still have 31 or 32 trillion in debt. We don't even have Republicans that are willing to put forth balanced budgets proposals. We have an unsecure border. We don't really have any immigration reform like we were promised. Where's the healthcare reform that we've been asking for years as Republicans? So those are the key issues that I think have to be addressed. And if you get to those basics, a couple things will happen. Even if you're not appeasing everybody, I think America would stand up and say, thank you. Thank you for being accountable. Thank you for taking responsibility and moving on those things that are very impactful for our lives. And even folks that don't agree with everything that you do, by being very transparent, very forthcoming, challenging you and the rest of Washington, whether it's the president or the head of the Senate or the head of the House, challenging all as a group, challenging their membership to get stuff done. That would be politically rewarded. I do it here in New Hampshire all the time. I have last time I checked, I'm pretty popular governor here in New Hampshire. And it isn't because everyone agrees with everything I do. It's because we're very transparent. We own things that work. We own things that don't work. We develop systems and design kind of bottom up from a customer service perspective. Nobody in D.C. has that type of mentality right now. And I think that kind of adheres to some of the frustration that America has towards pretty much all of Washington, D.C. Are you doing this out of New York or Washington?
I'm in New York. No, I'm definitely not in Washington. And it's interesting. I mean, governors have always played a major role, of course, in presidential races. It feels like it's much more the governors as well this time around. I don't know if you think that's because of perceptions of the 202 area code or the nature of the governor's job, but those are the people we're looking at.
I think it's, if I may, I think it's both. And I think it was really highlighted during the pandemic, right? Governors managed. Governors during the pandemic, and most legislatures went away. There was the federal government and the governors that had the responsibility for driving their own systems and during the national crisis. And I think for the most part, governors did a very good job. I'm incredibly proud of the team that we had here. And I think America saw governors leading day in and day out, having to make a lot of decisions on the quick, having to be accountable for those decisions. And, you have legislators in Congress that kind of disappeared a little bit after basically April, something like that was like the last bill they passed that had to do with a pandemic. So governors took it from there. And I think overall we did very well, and America acknowledged that. So I think that differentiation between what does a governor do and what does a senator or a congressman do was night and day. And I think a lot of folks stood up and said, yeah, there's a different mindset when it comes to CEO, executive level leadership in terms of getting stuff done and being accountable to those systems.
Now, I know you have to reflect the culture of the state that you're in, but I've always been intrigued by the fact that you are quite moderate in your stance with regard to these hot button issues like sexual orientation, abortion, etc. Why is that? Why is that? Is that just reflecting your own personal beliefs, or is it really about what you believe?
Yeah, well, it's my own personal beliefs, but also it's the beliefs of the majority of America, right?
Yeah.
And it's how we do things in New Hampshire. It's your business. You do you.
Live free or die.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, the live free or die isn't just 4 words on a license plate. Like, it really is how we manage ourselves here. It goes to that concept of individual responsibility and believing in the individual, understanding that even as governor, the voters are a lot smarter than I am, right? The voters know in their towns what's most important to their schools, or what roads need to be paved, or what's happening with their water systems. And that's why the very little bit of taxes, right? We don't have income tax. We don't have sales tax. We don't have interest and dividends tax. We don't have, death taxes or millionaires taxes or any of that nonsense. The little bit of tax that you do pay in New Hampshire is property tax. I have no say on that. It's mostly done at the local level. Now, we obviously have to do a lot of it. I still manage a $7.5 billion budget. But at the end of the day, folks are empowered in New Hampshire to make decisions for themselves. That all goes to that individual liberty and freedom. You can call them moderate stances, but I think that's where most of America is, right? And when it comes to issues of the LGBTQ community or transgender rights or whatever it might be, you do you.
That has not been the case in Florida, and I'm curious about your views of Ron DeSantis, if you've had a chance to have discussions with him, because it is proving to be very popular and tapping into some of that anger and that sense of perhaps being disillusioned with America seems to be working for him. Am I wrong?
Well, I wouldn't speak for Ron. I haven't talked to him about this issue. Florida is a very different place, and we disagree on substance in a few areas as conservatives. I think we disagree in style, in approach. I can just speak to myself. I try to be very more inspirational, more focused on the individual opportunities for businesses, for individuals themselves. Again, my job is not to tell you how to live your life or what door to go through. My job is to set up as many doors of opportunity. And then you pick the one that best fits your needs. As long as we're making sure that kids are protected and safe and in their environment and in schools, whatever it might be. We put the right guidelines on systems. They're always around in terms of health and safety. But after that, it's really about creating opportunity. That's what government is here to do. It is incredibly rare that we look to ban things, right? It should be a very real rarity in terms of government. Nowadays, it seems like each side is trying to ban the other side and cancel the other side. I'm not a big government guy. I don't think anybody should be. I don't think from the top down, from the governor down, from the state house down, we should be forcing our solutions onto you. We're not here to solve. I don't believe government is here to solve your problems. Not at all, actually. Again, my job is to create all these doors of opportunity, and then you figure out what solution is best for your family or your kids or your business or whatever it is, right? And so that's really how the founding fathers framed this. And that's really, I think, at the heart of being that, principled free market conservative that I am in terms of, do I disagree with the decisions that a lot of towns might make? Yes. Do I disagree with the decisions or the political views of a business? Sure, I do. But it ain't my job to force them to be like me or to force them to think like me or to penalize them when they don't. So at the end of the day, I think that's probably where we diverge the most in that I think it's okay to disagree with the governor. I think it's okay not to have the same politics. That's all right. I'm going to provide as much freedom and opportunity for you and your business in terms of individual liberty, get the government out of the way, do as much regulatory reform that we can, and we're doing a lot of that, licensure reform and that those sorts of things where government bureaucracy seems to get in folks' way. I'm here to get it out of your way and just give you the best opportunity to be successful for you and your family.
One of the things that intrigues me about your background, Governor, is the work you did as an engineer. I know you did land remediation and such, which made me think about sustainability and realize it's not something that's been a center to the conversation for the GOP. How do you think about it yourself as a governor, but also at the national level?
So a couple of things. Look, my background is I was a civil and an environmental engineer.
Right.
I cleaned up hazardous waste sites all over the country. And whether it's contaminated soil or groundwater, and it was always done with the idea that you could redevelop these sites and build on these sites and grow and create economic opportunity out of these sites. And, sometimes I was the guy that was hired to kind of fight the EPA because the EPA would be too restrictive. They'd say, oh, you can't build here. You can't build here for 30 years. But we'd find a financially viable way to clean something up sensibly and move forward economically on it. And that's the approach I try to bring to government. There are smart, sensible, financially responsible steps you can take, whether it's on climate initiatives or clean energy or whatever it might be. It's not Green New Deal type stuff. That is a disaster. That stuff is absolutely disastrous for the country. This anti-fossil fuel stuff is a disaster. I'm very pro the spectrum of what you need to be successful. And I very much understand that when you talk about a variety of fuel sources or energy sources, what's best and what is best and would create the best opportunity for New Hampshire might be incredibly different for Arizona or California or Kentucky or Florida. So again, you have to let states design their own systems as opposed to this Washington one-size-fits-all, top-down. We're going to, borrow trillions more dollars, spend your taxpayer dollars very poorly. That's the one thing Washington does well is waste your money, as opposed to letting states design their own systems.
But is it would it be a priority for you? And I'm not trying to bait you here. I'm genuinely curious because a lot of, especially younger voters, think about climate change. How big a priority is it for you? I mean, in terms of
huge.
Yeah.
Look, the priority is we are missing an opportunity with the next generation of voter. You've hit it right on the head. The next generation of voter, especially the next generation of potential Republican voter, doesn't want you to be climate change crazy. They just want to know that you're taking the environment seriously.
Yeah.
It's a top priority for them. Even the Republicans and the conservatives, it's a top priority. Homelessness is a top priority for them. And they want to know you're making smart, responsible steps, redesigning systems from the bottom up as they should be to make sure that we're getting the best results without putting too much economic burden on our taxpayers. And there are real ways to do that. We've been very successful with that here in New Hampshire. But But too much of the messaging out of the Republican Party doesn't even want to address that stuff. They're afraid of alienating the base or something like that, as opposed to understanding that is the future messaging, and there's opportunity there to be smart, conservative, and responsible with it. And that's exactly what that next generation of Republicans wants to see.
And education too, of course, which I know is something you've thought about. I mean, I know the student loans are in the news right now, but this education and the need for lifelong education. And I don't know if you want to weigh in on that. I'm not going to go through every issue, but I do think that's an area that, again, we haven't heard as much, except more for what we shouldn't have.
Yeah, it's all about school choice, because, again, school choice is about ensuring that the government isn't forcing you through one door. We have some of the best public schools in the country and the best teachers in the country right here in New Hampshire. I'm incredibly proud of that. But maybe for 1 or 2% of the kids, maybe those traditional 4 walls of the classroom don't work as well. So give the parents and the students the option to find the path that fits their needs, whether they be charter schools or private schools. They can now take the state funds that are allocated to them, because it's their money. It ain't my money. It's your money, right? As a parent, you can take those state funds and dedicate them to the best path for your child. And that's something that had never been talked about, but never done before. We started the program, Education Savings Accounts, here in New Hampshire a couple of years ago. It's gone like gangbusters. We're going to try to grow it even from where it is. We focused on inner city families, low income families, families that just have never been even afforded the question, what do you think is best for your child? And by even just asking them that and then giving them that opportunity, holy cow, do their eyes open up and opportunities flourish from that. So it's all built on that model of opportunity, not saying you have to go to this school or have to learn in this way, or you're really stuck to your educational options because of your zip code. That's not opportunity. So we try to, again, just live by that live free or die spirit, that limited government, local control, individual responsibility, opportunity.
One other issue I want to touch on, which is being a Canadian, it's where I was raised. You've actually been quite active in talking about border control, which is an issue we always associate with the Mexico-U.S. border, rarely as much with Canada. Talk a bit about the reinforcements there and how you're thinking about that.
So the number of illegal immigrants coming over the northern border has gone up something like 700% in just the past 6 months. And so it's becoming a real issue all across the northern border. And the United States northern border is huge. It's one of the largest peaceful borders on the planet. And we share one. We don't have a huge part of it, but New Hampshire does have a northern border. And so what we've seen is the Border Patrol agents, who do a very good job up there, they don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower. A lot of that has been shifted to the southern border to kind of make sure that all this stuff is being fulfilled on. So we see folks just kind of walking across. Canada has some international agreements with certain countries that allow it that make it very easy for those folks to go to Canada and then potentially walk across a very unguarded, unprotected northern border. So all I've done is I've simply gone to the federal government and said, look, you're not putting the manpower here. You're not putting the money here. Let me do it. We'll do it. I'll put the money up. I'll put the manpower up. Just let my state police, my sheriffs, some of the folks in the northernmost towns be able to have what they call, it's an ICE, I think it's called an ICE detainer agreement. So effectively, we are empowered to do a lot of those things that right now they don't have the manpower to do. So we're kind of waiting to hear back. It doesn't look great. Unfortunately, Homeland Security has have a bit of a deaf ear to all of this. So we're going to keep pushing the issue and just make sure that we're protecting, our part of the northern border and ensuring that if folks are even thinking about coming across, it's not in the state of New Hampshire.
Now, I'm always aware of the fact that you come from a rich political tradition, Governor. Your father being a former governor, obviously your older brother as well. I'm curious what advice they have given to you that has really shaped you or that you come back to again and again in terms of your own leadership or thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting. Being that my dad was a governor, he's still around. And, he gave me a great piece of advice once. He said, be wary of unsolicited advice, right?
Okay.
Right? Because
don't listen to me.
Unsolicited advice, it's rarely taken. And so it adheres to that. So he says, look, I'm always here for you. If you can give me, if you have any questions or you want to bang some ideas around. And I do, I call him a couple times a week about what's happening, what he's seeing politically, what does he think of this? And sometimes he gives me an answer that is very, Well, it would have been perfect in 1987, but I need to kind of shape that into something today. It's shaped that into kind of a 2023 answer, into understanding our communication, our systems, and the dynamics we have today. So the biggest thing I took from both my mom and my dad wasn't so much that they had to tell me, but just in how he governed. He said, be accessible, be genuine, right? And be accountable. Just be yourself. So many folks, so many of my peers, if you will, try so hard being something they're not. They really limit their accessibility to the public in terms of allowing that constituent service dialogue to happen, which is so important, being really transparent about who you are, what you believe, and letting the questions fly. So I do a lot of national media, as you were talking about earlier. But the main reason I do is because I love to hear the questions. I love to get the input. What are folks hearing out there? And I want to be super accessible and transparent about where I am on this stuff. And when you do that, you build an amazing amount of public trust. And that's the key to all this. You know, transparency, that transparency is the foundation of public trust. And it builds a relationship, if you will. The best thing I can do for my citizens is give them real valuable listening time. The story I give you, maybe you've heard it before. I do all my own grocery shopping. I love to go grocery shopping. It's like my
you
own
love
meditation,
it?
if you will.
Why do you love it?
You know, two reasons. Number one, I guess it's the math in me. I got my budget. I got my $125 I'm going to spend at the store, and I got to go around and figure it out. I'm just very comfortable there. I don't know.
$125 a week for the family. I've got to get your shopping tips then.
Yeah. Well, stay away from the ends. Stay away from the cap. What we call the cap ends of the aisles. You got to go to the middle of the aisles to get the best deal. And you know, don't be afraid to grab a couple extra coupons because you know they tend to add up as well. And look for the specials. And if you go on the right days, you can always get the best specials.
That sounds good. Now I want to ask you. I'm the 2-year term, which I guess does, on the one hand, promote accountability. On the other hand, it means you're constantly running for office to some extent. Has there ever been any thought of perhaps amending that? I think New Hampshire is one of the last states, isn't it, with Vermont?
Yeah, us in Vermont. But so a couple things. Let me correct you. I'm not always running. Just the opposite.
Okay.
I don't even raise a penny into my campaign until about maybe April or May of the election year. I don't do it. See, as soon as you start campaigning, you bring politics as a variable into your decision making. And it's so much harder to get stuff done. So I made a commitment early on, and other governors have done that and they've struggled, but I made a commitment early on that when we get elected, we're just going to focus on getting stuff done. We don't care about campaigns. We don't care about fundraising. We don't do that, right? We just get stuff done. And even in just 2 years, I get an amazing amount done. I will never complain that, well, 2 years isn't enough time to get stuff done. It's plenty of time to get stuff done. If you know how to work with your legislature, focus on the job 24/7, keep politics out of the decisions. We've been able to do so much here in New Hampshire. Now, I'm on my 4th term. I'm the only second governor to ever have 4 terms, but there's never an excuse that I didn't have enough time to get stuff done. I'm always able to do it. And then when the campaign comes, you run on those successes. You run, I got all of this stuff done, and I did it because I ignored the politics early on. And then you run on those successes, and it's been an incredibly popular model and successful model for me, and I hope other governors follow it. We want to lead by that example. And look, if I'm not doing my job, yeah, you can fire me.
Okay, that's very fair.
Every 2 years. And that's okay.
Let me end on a political note, which is we hear so many people vilify Washington and take pride in not being part of Washington, but yet there's something alluring about, of course, being the president of the United States, maybe being in the Senate, whatever. How do you think about, what is it that intrigues you about that job, that role, even if you've not?
It can be done well. That the presidency can be done well. We haven't seen it really done well in a while. And so that's what's intriguing about it. I think people have lost a lot of faith. I think they've lost a lot of trust with Washington. But with the right leadership, it can be brought back. I know it can. I've seen it done, right? And we've been able to do it here in New Hampshire, and there's no reason somebody can't go to Washington and do it. I could have been a U.S. Senator. They asked me to run for the Senate. It does not attract me at all. That's not my skill set. My skill set is as a CEO. I believe in accountability. I believe in taking the credit where it's there and taking the blame where it has to be, because that's what leadership does. It doesn't deflect. And so I just get excited about the idea of reinstilling that public trust, reinstilling that optimism and that inspiration, that aspiration, if you will, that I think public service can bring to the table and should bring. But it only comes with the right leadership from the top.
Great. Well, we look forward to when you make your decision. And thanks for joining us, Governor.
You bet. Thanks so much.
Thank you.